Commission. In order to begin, we're going to go down the wish list item. Hopefully, by the time we get to items, the council member that requested the wish list item will be present. And each council member, I will ask you to just give an explanation of the request, reason for the request, and any funding source that you have identified for the wish list item, if you could, please. Councilman Tiger has already given his funding source for his wish list item for the agricultural extension, but for the sake of the work session, I guess we could start with you. If you could repeat that, just.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My proposal was a $25,000 grant to the Agricultural Extension Agency with an emphasis on school and community gardens to be administered. This body would have the responsibility of setting the criteria on who could apply and amounts and those type of things. And I proposed that the $25,000 comes out of the contingency or excess utility fund.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Tiger. Councilman Stein, the Arts Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do hope the chair will give some preference to the three of us that actually honored your request and gave you a potential funding source. So I just
that is a lot easier to consider.
Well, thank you. This funding is specifically from the Arts Commission to support the NASA program, adding additional arts component to it. I would say the school board's presentation actually gave sort of greater impetus to this, because one of their cuts on Bransford Avenue is to cut out the visual and performing art coordinator for the city, leaving only the music coordinator to coordinate 400 art teachers. So clearly, this would impact up to now 1,000 kids in the middle school after-school program for the city.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilman Stein. Let's see. Councilman Claiborne, did you want to go over the planning position that you added to the wish list? Would you like us to come back to you?
It's the planning one.
Well, let's take up juvenile court. Councilman Stein?
Yes, this is, there were two. This is the probation officer position, which works on the front line, which they lost it replaces some grant funding loss that cost them, I think, a couple of probation positions, and this is one of those probation positions.
Right. With juvenile court, I will go ahead and speak on the other grant. That grant actually covers, they're not probation officers, but it was 3 positions that work with families to find additional resources for kids that were coming through the juvenile court system. That grant is actually matched also. So if we're able to take advantage of that and provide the local match, juvenile court will get $55,200 additional dollars as a match to that grant. And I think that that's a very important program for the court. Councilman Stein,
yeah, and I was going to say that's a 1/3, and there's 2/3 coming from the other, so it actually leverages over $100,000 for the 55.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman Stein. Councilman Claiborne, are you prepared at this point? Do you still want me to come back? Just kind of give me a cue. Yeah, you could just give me a cue. Councilman McGuire is not here to discuss the election commission, nor is Councilman Bedney here to discuss the council office position. Councilor Allen, would you like to discuss the historical commission wish list request? Just one second. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I mean, as everyone heard yesterday, their workload has increased significantly. I think they said 50%, and they lost a person several years ago, and they have simply worked harder and harder to keep up with that. appreciate their efforts to try to keep up with it, but they have agreed that they're pretty much at the breaking point, to quote Mr. Walker, in terms of being able to deal with the issues that have come up. And I think also what came out in the discussion yesterday is that there are benefits not only to the districts that have historic districts within them, but also to the entire city, just in terms of tourism and also the general programming that they do for historical events all over Nashville. Currently dealing with the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, but ongoing programs that are educational opportunities for our children and our youth. So I think it's a benefit to the whole city, and I would like to see that happen. I had suggested perhaps, and I don't have a good number of how much money could be generated by an additional permit fee that's applied as people apply for this. I don't know that would be stifling to development, and I know we don't want to do that, but that seemed like one possible source of income. There may be others here that I haven't had a chance to identify,
Okay.
but I'll keep looking.
If you identify any after this, just let Mr. Cooper know.
Okay,
If you would.
sure will. Thank you.
Councilman Stein, did you have a comment?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I'm not in opposition to this, but I just wanted to say, if all of our directors were asked at what point they reached their breaking point, I think some of them would have been in intensive care a couple of years ago.
All right, Councilman Stein, thank you. Council Lady Langster is not here to discuss the public defender request that she made, so we won't take that up at this time. While Councilman Claiborne is obviously still searching for an explanation for his wish list items. Okay.
I talked to Doug Sloan a little while ago about the wish list item they had made for the planning position, and it is for a new Planner 1 position, which is an entry-level planning professional as a result of the increased workload that they've had from all the new permit applications and development applications they're having to review. As the housing market increases and the economy improves, their workload has increased significantly. And I would point out that the council actually cut the planning commission in the current fiscal year budget, the substitute last year. So they are looking to try and make up some of that reduction. So that'd be $63,700, which is the salary and the fringe benefits.
All right. Mr. Cooper helped you out with your... You can go ahead, Councilman.
I was trying to get in touch with somebody to help refresh my memory. I was fuzzy on what the specific request was, and I can't get anybody on the phone. So I appreciate John having the details there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Claiborne. I just got notification, Council Lady Berry is running late, but she has sent notice that she's going to withdraw her wish list request for the DA's office until after council receives recommendation from who did we request that to? The law department, legal department on the state statute that the public defender brought up. So she's going to withdraw that for now until we see about that appropriation, if there is an appropriation needed. I do want to go ahead and speak, and Councilman Claiborne, I'll give you a break, but you requested to stay fair, but I'll go ahead and speak on workforce development and give you time to prepare for that. Are you ready? Oh, go ahead.
When Buck was talking about the giving his presentation, and in one of their concerns that they had listed there was the fact that if there was no subsidy, that these three events would be perhaps in jeopardy. And since two of these, especially the Lawn and Garden Show and the Christmas Village, are long-running events that have taken place at the fair, I've just felt that, if there is a possibility that those two events especially would be in danger of being able to take place because of lack of support or some other reason, that we need to do whatever necessary to ensure that those are there. And he went on to say that if the requested reduced amount subsidy was given, that $200,000 would be part of that. But I think his answer was that if there is no subsidy coming forth as requested, that at least the $200,000 would make sure that those three events, including the gun shows, on a monthly basis, would be supported and would not be in any kind of danger of not being able to take place.
All right. Thank you, Council Member. Council Lady Moore.
On this particular subsidy, could we get from the director? I'm still a little bit need further clarification on why this would be needed, because what are the numbers for the lawn and garden show that we really need this, or what are the Christmas Village numbers gun show? So could we get that information from Buck as to why this subsidy would be needed?
We could put that request in.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cooper, could you send a message to Mr. Dozier?
Jeopardized because of the lack of plan.
Councilman Dominic?
Thank you. While we're adding things for Mr. Dozier to come up with, if he could provide us with the sales tax generated on the property, that would be helpful.
Sales tax.
The sales tax. It's my understanding that the sales tax generated on the property is greater than the amount of the subsidy they're requesting in total, that being the $400 and some odd thousand subsidy. So we're generating more sales tax on the property than that, most likely, but I'd like to get that data from Buck.
Right. Thank you, Councilman Dominic. I think the only item left for us to discuss is the Workforce Development Program at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and explain that request. The Workforce Development Program, of course, was a pilot that started with the Music City Center. It's been successful in putting local people to work in the construction and development field in various positions in local development and construction. But I think that this program, in the success that it's had at the Music City Center, and also the success that it's had at the Omni Hotel, which was not required to use the program, I think it could be a great tool as we look at incentive packages, as we're offering incentives in the future to different corporations, different businesses, and also as we're looking at our own capital budget. I mean, we have a capital spending plan of $300 million before us, and as we're looking at building Nashville, as we're looking at making Nashville better, those that do business with us, they should be putting local people to work also. And I think that it's one thing to go to contractors and ask them to hire local people, but it's another thing to make sure that we do have a workforce that's ready, that's trained, that's able to go onto jobs and actually produce for the contractors that we would like to hire local people and to keep money invested in the city. So I think that this program could be a very good resource for the department or the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. I think Matt will be able to leverage this type of tool and resource as he brings incentive packages before us, because one thing that he's always questioned about is how many local people will benefit from the jobs that are created by any projects that come forward. So I think that's a very important thing to do as we look at creating opportunity for all, as the mayor spoke about in the State of Metro address, making sure that local people, especially those that are unemployed and unskilled, that they have opportunity in this city as well. Councilman Stein?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak in support of that as well, Mr. Chair, but I think that it has worked. It has also worked in this instance. While obviously the administration is very supportive, clearly you and other members of this council have helped drive that program to a substantial extent. And when we have something that's working, if we can add a little bit to it to exponentially increase its effectiveness, it's the kind of thing that we ought to look at. And I congratulate the chair.
Thank you, Councilman Stein. Councilman Taggart?
I had two other new issues, so whenever you get to the point.
No, that's.
Okay. Councilman Harmon just asked me a question right before we started this session, that there, in the school budget, there was $2,400 in the school board
For each board member.
raises, and that was apparently a mistake. It was left over from the previous year to equalize pay or something. Do you expect to make that adjustment in the school's budget, or just?
Would that be per board member? And
I'll defer to Councilman Harmon on that.
Well, at the hearing last evening, Mr. Henson said that he would take a look at that and get back to me. I have not actually heard back from him, but rather heard back from the budget chair, Board Member Pinkston, who said that it was his understanding that that was an artifact from a previous budget proposal and that it would be removed. But I'd just like clarification if the school budget request is going to be reduced by that or not.
The budget request would not be reduced, but since they are appropriating $12 million from reserves, this would just be less money from fund balance that they would need, essentially.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
Okay,
Cooper.
and then one other item caught my attention, and I don't want to carry Councilman McGuire's bucket here, but there's one item on the Election Commission request that he had based on the problems we had in a couple of polls in the previous election, and it's about the fifth item down on the second page, and it has to do with poll worker training of poll regulations and electronic poll book use. And I'm just throwing the question out to the rest of the council members. Are we comfortable that the Election Commission's budget has sufficient training in there, or should we make sure that there is training so that the next election in May next year, whenever, it's $56,800 for training of poll officials and especially electronic poll book use? The two precincts that we had problems last time, almost from what I was able to tell, had to do to inaccuracies in the poll book and how to use that system.
All right, Councilman Stein?
Yeah, Councilman Tiger, my take is that that's probably a worthwhile effort, but they are clearly going to have some savings because they've got some vacancies in some big salaries there. And I would urge us, rather than to add to the budget, that to send a letter from this committee expressing our support for that and asking them to monitor their budget and us handle that with a supplement rather than upfront if indeed their budget can't handle it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I have no problem with that as long as we make sure that that supplement could be done at a time period that if they decide that they can't do that training, that it happens early enough in the year so the training can occur before the election.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, the good news is there's not an election this year. I mean, they've got some time to figure that out, and it might not even be this year. I mean, I don't know how far in advance they do some of those trainings, but it may be an issue for next year's budget rather than this year.
We could certainly, from the committee, do a letter to Ms. Nixon and ask her to look at it and see when she think that funding for the vacant positions will run out, how much that funding will be, and if it will cover the cost of training. We could certainly, Mr. Cooper, can you make note? Councilman Dominic?
Thank you, Chairman Matthews. I just want to point out the importance of the software licensing requests. Those things are vital to them maintaining those records, and they have eaten that or absorbed that in the rest of their budget in the past. I think we need to be sure we take that into consideration in our budget and adding that back.
All right, Councilman Dominic, thank you. Councilman Stein?
Yeah, isn't that a potential 4% request, Mr. Cooper? Software, computer stuff?
Yes. Yes.
They've done it before.
It's an integral part of the operation.
All right. Seeing no other council members in queue, are there any other council members that would like to speak on any of the wish list items? Seeing none, I would like to thank you all for coming to the work session. I now have my work cut out for me. Councilman Tiger.
Can you give us an idea of what to expect next week and what your hope is in this process?
What my hope is, because most of the wish list items were on the wish list before today, I have been looking at the wish list throughout the budget process. My hope is to be able to identify, I think the only thing we had added today was the agricultural extension. So if we could identify, especially with the withdrawals of the DA's office, the public defenders, well, the public defender is not on, well, Council A. Langster wasn't here, so, but I think it's probably appropriate to wait for that same opinion before we even take that into consideration at this point. Some of the other items, the state fair issue, I would like to see if we could get that information before making a final decision on that, but I definitely think those are important events, and I think they're necessary, so I would like to make sure that we can ensure that they do have those events and have what they need to make those events happen. I would like to do a majority of what has been put on the wish list. Looking at our contingency funds and what I've looked at already, I think we can do a lot of what has been put on the wish list. But I suppose that, and my hope is to really have a substitute or be able to present something to the finance department, hopefully, depending on Mr. Cooper's time before the end of the day. And so they could work on something over the weekend and have something to present by Monday morning. If we're able to do that, then I definitely would like to go forward next week with going ahead and considering the budget. If we're not able to meet that timeline, of course, we don't take up the capital improvements budget until the following week. So we do have time. It's not something that has to be rushed, but if we can make it happen, I would like to go ahead and try to take it up next week if we could, so that we could really give attention to the capital improvements budget the following week and not try to do them all at the same time. But I do think that we've been very reasonable as a council with the requests that have been made. I do think there's opportunity with the wish list requests, and so that's where I hope we could proceed in that manner. So, Councilman Dominic.
Chairman Matthews, the school board last night indicated that they would not be deciding on some of the issues that we had talked with them about until the 11th. Would we be making the decision on the school before we get that data back, or?
The school board, they were speaking to cuts that they will make, which they said they wouldn't make a decision on those cuts, but those are cuts that they identify for the amount of funding that they would have to cut from their proposal. That's not money that they already had anyway. That's money that they were asking for. In addition to what they were already funded for. So they're looking at actually the $18 million that the mayor cut out of their original proposal. I don't think that will be affected. I don't really suspect reducing the schools, what the mayor proposed for schools. So I don't think that information will be pertinent to their operating budget at this time. They're just looking at how they're going to balance what they originally had requested or presented to the mayor and what the mayor in turn presented to us.
Okay, I just want to make that point, since they had said they were going to be making a decision on the 11th. If we were going to be finalizing the budget for that decision, if it wasn't going to impact that, we might want to take that into consideration. But since it doesn't appear to, I don't see that's a problem. I don't think
even if we took up our budget on the 11th, we would probably be meeting at the same time as them, so we would not have that information.
No,
at that time either.
Our meeting wouldn't be on the 11th unless we set up a special adjourned meeting.
We have a special meeting on the 11th already.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our next call meeting.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir. Councilman Harmon. Councilman Claiborne?
So, based on what you just said about you wouldn't expect to cut the school budget, so is that being understood to say that you're in favor of holding it as the mayor has presented to us?
At this time, with what we have on our wish list, I don't think we will have to touch the school education's budget at this point.
Plus or minus?
Pardon?
Plus or minus?
Plus or minus?
Yes.
Oh, yes, plus or minus.
Right.
Yes.
I'm just, for the reasons that I stated last night, I'm firmly advocating. I mean, as a retired teacher, I fully understand the value of education and the need to do that. But from the position that I've sat in here for the last 6 years, I'm a firm advocate that if we don't exercise caution in funding the schools going forward, we are going to have, maybe not in this administration, but in a future administration, we're going to go beyond that 50% mark in terms of what it costs to fund the school system. And once we move beyond that point, then other departments in metro government are going to be negatively affected by that. And so there has to be some austerity begin to take place in looking at school budgets going forward.
I understand, Councilman. Any other comments? Then we're adjourned. Thank you.